Now, first of all, yes, the teacher is swearing here. I've cut it out, but the teacher is swearing. And that is not something that is uncommon for me to have seen working in public schools. A lot of teachers think it's like a way to be cool and like relate to the kids or this type of thing, to swear with them, and they think it's just fine. That goes on commonly in American schools. So kids, they're really, really good at behaving one way in one context and entirely different in a different context. And there's lots of kids where just to survive the teenage culture in middle school and high school, especially in American schools, they have to do a whole bunch of swearing because it's just the common vernacular amongst American kids. Because sometimes I play these videos and people are like, is that really what it's like in American schools? These types of interactions are extremely common in American schools. And many of the teachers nowadays either stop caring that the kids do that. For some of them, especially if they're younger, like millennial generation or younger, they've internalized that there's just nothing wrong with swearing. What's really wrong about it? And they're just letting the kids do this throughout the day. So I just said to emphasize the need for our own schools and our own institutions where there's a modicum of values set. But look at this boy in the yellow ball. You see him? You see him? You see what he's doing with his hands and with his face? That is like a physiological response and showing of the initial stages of becoming desensitized to this type of thing and getting hardened to this type of thing. And again, it inevitably puts up defense walls between parents and children, and that eventually result, if those are not broken down or they're built up in the first place and never gone away, that is what results in children distancing themselves from their parents and what their parents want for them. Kids test boundaries, or they lose control of themselves, and they will respect adults who they see as being in control of themselves, which begins with the adult being in control of their own emotions, which the kids are very sensitive to how they interpret it, but the adult who is in control of their own emotions, they will interpret as being in control of the situation. If they interpret the adult as being in control of the situation, they'll be more likely to comply with them.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Firstly, I really want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you everyone who helped make this event happen. JazakumAllahukhairan. I'm going to do just a quick introduction and go over the goals of this event. There are three main goals I'd like to mention, inshallah. The first goal is to come together as a community. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, a believer to another believer is like a building whose different parts enforce each other. And he, ﷺ, he clasped his hands with the fingers interlaced. So this is a very important goal, to come together, to get to know each other, and to help each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask that Allah put barakah in this gathering, and inshallah this is the first of many beneficial gatherings. The second goal is to inform everyone about what's going on with Straight Path Academy. This is the Islamic school that we're working to establish for the Jacksonville and Greater Jacksonville Muslim community. And then the main event is our brother here, Michael Abraham, who's visiting us from Minnesota. He gave an incredible khutbah today, Allahumma barak. And tonight he will be talking about how to manage kids. And then inshallah tomorrow at 3, we're going to have the second part of the event. And tomorrow he'll be talking about how kids learn. So Straight Path Academy, this is a project we've been working on for the past 2 years. I could speak for hours about it, but I'm going to try to just spend about 5 minutes. If you'd like more information, then please go to the website, straightpathacademy.org. There are many videos that you can watch, and you can see the progress that we've been making over the past 2 years. But one of the things I do want to cover is the necessity for something like Straight Path Academy, the need for it. And I want to mention 3 hadith of the Prophet ﷺ to really emphasize this and why we're calling it Straight Path Academy. The Prophet, peace be upon him, he said that there is not a child except that they are born upon the fitrah. The fitrah meaning a natural instinct, a natural inclination toward the straight path of Islam. So it's upon us as parents to nurture our children and keep them on that straight path. Allah has already blessed us with the fitrah. And it's important that we nurture them and we try to maintain them on the straight path, on the fitrah, because the Messenger ﷺ, he was teaching the Sahaba and he drew a line in the sand with his hand and said, "This is the straight path of Allah." Then he drew lines to the right and left and said, "These are other paths, and there is no path among them except that a shaitan is upon it calling to its way." And then he recited the verse, "Verily, this is the straight path, so follow it and do not follow other paths." So while our children are born with the fitrah, inclined towards the straight path, we know that in this dunya, it's a test. And there are shayateen trying to lead all of us astray. So it's important that we try to maintain ourselves and our families on the straight path of Islam, especially since the Prophet ﷺ, he told us about this responsibility as parents. He said, all of you are shepherds and each of you is responsible for his flock. So 3 more, I guess you could say, goals regarding Straight Path Academy is number 1, we want our children to have a strong Islamic identity and education. We want them to be around other Muslims. We want growing up being a Muslim to be something natural for them, something that they're comfortable with, where they're not feeling like they have to hide their Islam, where they feel like they are unlike the people around them. They're going to be around other Muslims. They're going to be praying. They're going to be learning some of the most basic things that unfortunately many of our kids today don't know because they're not in an environment where they're praying, where they're being taught Surah Al-Fatiha, or they're being taught Arabic language or some of the most basics of our deen. So that's a very important part. But we also want to have highest ranking academic achievements part of our goal as well. We want them to also excel in math and science so that when it's time for them to choose a career, they have all the qualifications, inshallah. And then, of course, we also want engaging clubs and after-school programs. This is something very important to get our children around other Muslim children and to do fun things outside of the house that's beneficial for them, that's healthy for them. And that's something that we want to do to get them off of the tablets, get them off of the internet, off of the video games, and to play sports, be engaged in clubs, so on and so forth. So when it comes to actually opening the school, there's 3 steps. Okay, if everyone's on board, you're like, yes, I like the idea, I want to sign my kids up, there's 3 steps. Okay, we have 2 of those 3 steps already accomplished, inshallah. The first step is you have to have a dedicated and qualified team. Inshallah, this is something that we already have. From our team, I'll just mention 2 of us. All right, so there's Omar Shatila. He has worked in Islamic education for over 10 years and has served as a principal of Islamic schools in Florida and New York for over 8 years. He's an education consultant and an expert on school accreditation, and he's served in the past as the president of the Florida Islamic Schools Association, the vice president of the Council of Islamic Schools of North America, and on the board of the Florida Kindergarten Council. So establishing Islamic schools and getting them accredited and hiring staff and making them thrive year after year, this is what he's dedicated his life to. This is his career. He's a very important part of the team. A little bit of my background. I became Muslim in 2008. 2 years later, I went to the Islamic University of Medina from the end of 2010 until the beginning of 2019. I studied the Arabic language. I studied Dawah wa Usul ad-Din, where we focused on propagating the message of Islam. And I came back in 2019 and I began teaching ever since. So alhamdulillah, I have over 5 years experience now teaching, and I've been authoring many books. This is what I want to dedicate my life to teaching. And also, I understand as somebody who embraced Islam later in life, what you have to go through in order to learn your religion in this country, in the English language, so on and so forth. So I've already published 3 books, and inshallah, I have more in the works. So that is the first step that we have, inshallah, and there's many other people. For example, Michael Abraham. We network. When you get into this line of work, you network with lots of other people, and there are many people who want to come to Jacksonville, inshallah, and be a part of this project. Number 2 is a demand for such a school, meaning that there are students who will attend the school. This link here, this is an article that was posted 7 years ago, and it stated that Jacksonville's Muslim community grew from less than 10 families to its current size, over 8,000 residents. This was 7 years ago. Okay, I came 5 years ago. Now it's post-COVID. People have been coming to Jacksonville. So currently it's likely to be over 10,000 Muslim residents and growing. Now, for a pre-K to 12th grade school to be self-sustaining, we only need a little over 200 students to be enrolled at the school. If we're just going to do an upper school for 6th to 12th grade, for it to be self-sustaining, we need a little over 100 students enrolled. Okay, so that's only about 15 students per grade on average. So there's definitely a demand. And one special thing about Florida is that there is a scholarship program. So people don't have to worry about not being able to afford the tuition like they do in other states. So inshallah, there's definitely a demand for it. So we have 2 out of the 3. What's the third thing? This is what we've really been working on the past 2 years. This is proving to be the biggest challenge so far. We need a property. We need an actual property to run the school. So I can talk so long about all my experiences, but I'm just going to summarize and mention that from what I've found over the past 2 years of obsessing over this and trying to find a property, a suitable property that can be repurposed and zoned as a school in an appropriate location, it's going to cost approximately $2 million. So that's basically where we're at. We have to try to, inshallah, get $2 million. Then we can purchase a property, we can open the school. Another challenge we're facing, anybody who has any experience in real estate in this country, is trying to avoid riba, trying to avoid interest. You see this image here where it says help establish the world's best Islamic school. This is our GoFundMe page. Allahumma barak, we've raised well over $300,000. People are donating, they're excited about it. And usually, you take $300,000, you'd get a $3 million loan. However, we're not going to deal with interest for the sake of Allah. We don't want to establish a school based on sinning and going at war with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are trying to basically raise the $2 million so that we can purchase it without getting into interest, without dealing with riba. And whether that be an Islamic loan, whatever the case may be, that's basically where we're at. So ways to help, number one, of course, is to donate. So jazakumAllahukhairan, anybody who can help, donate. And if you don't have, obviously some people are wealthier than others. Maybe you know somebody who is looking to, get the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by investing in such a project. There is so much ajr in something like this. This is a sadaqah jariyah. I mean, just imagine every single child that is learning Surah Al-Fatiha, learning how to read the Quran, every little thing, inshallah, you will get the reward even after you pass away. So if you can just donate, spread the word. If anyone can give a non-interest loan, of course, and your dua is also, of course, not belittled at all whatsoever. I'll mention that Straight Path Academy is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Your donations are tax deductible. And finally, now we get to the main event. This is our brother Michael Abraham. Just a little bit of his background. He was born and raised in Minnesota, and he embraced Islam in 2007. He has over 14 years of teaching experience, and his programs have helped over 2,000 educators across 15 states and 150 school districts and organizations in the U.S. Today's topic is going to be how to manage kids. And inshallah, tomorrow he will be talking about how kids learn. So, jazakumAllahukhairan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Brother Saajid. JazakumAllahukhairan for all of you for being here. So, guys, this is going to be a little different than, the type of thing you normally get in a masjid. Because, what this is training that I do for teachers and parents. And the kind of skills you need as a teacher, there's a lot of crossover with that as parents. At the same time, too, as I was saying in the khutbah today, if you're there, we need more people to be around the Muslim kids and to be teachers to them, whether it's in the masjid, in programs that we do, or in the Islamic schools. You'll see from this, a good school can be established, and it can teach the teachers itself how to teach. Teacher training education is a complete mess in the United States. Public education in general is a complete mess in the United States. And it's not because of the LGBT stuff and the gender ideology stuff that everyone talks about. It's not real. I mean, that's a thing, but it's really just one thing. The way that they manage kids, what I'm going to teach you here today isn't what most schools do, but it's the thing that's most effective. I teach in South Minneapolis. I teach at a high school that's 4 blocks away from where George Floyd was killed. Inner city teaching is very, very challenging. You need a certain skill set in order to get the kids to sit down and listen, and to stay that way, and to stay on track. And even though you can't even get by in an inner city school without that stuff, it's the same things you need in any place. What it mostly comes down to is mitigating misbehavior with nonverbal communication. Okay, nonverbal communication means how you communicate with everything except for the words you say. That's what verbal means, words. So your body language, your facial expression, your tone of voice, the volume with which you speak, the pattern with which you speak, all these types of things. This is actually a very thorough area of study in the field of psychology and in child management. And it's the stuff that is most effective when it comes to managing kids towards the goals that I talked about in the khutbah, of actually getting kids to respect the adult teaching them, actually getting to buy into their wisdom. But it's not what most schools do, because to do it effectively, number one, there's not a whole lot of money for companies to make in it, because it's stuff that anyone can just do on the spot once they have the skill with it. And number two, you have to practice it really thoroughly and consistently with the kids to get the most out of it. And the shortcut to managing kids is one of two things. Either it's being really punitive with them, and almost every culture on earth has gone through one period or another, or a long period or another, where their system of managing kids amounted to just being very punitive with them. And there's an extent to which you can get away with that. But it doesn't do anything to motivate kids. It can coerce them for a time. But eventually kids get desensitized to it, or they get to a point where they are so sick of it that they start pushing back on it, and when they get the opportunity, they run away from it. A lot of people grow up that way. Sometimes people grow up that way, and then the conclusion they make, they had like a traumatic experience from being yelled at too much, or maybe being hit when they were kids and this type of thing. And because they had a traumatic experience from that, they know when they become adults, they don't want to do the same thing, but they don't know what else to do. So one of two things happen. Either they just fall into the same habits, because they're ingrained in you somewhere, if that's what you got when you were a kid. Or secondly, they go to the other extreme, which is relying on rewarding kids with material things in order to incentivize them. And this is what most of the school system does. They use little point systems, they use little ticket systems, they use little reward systems to get the kids to be good. You can look up positive behavior intervention systems, PBIS. It's probably the most common behavior management system used in the United States. It is based upon rewarding kids with material things when they do positive stuff. The thing with that is it only has the same long-term effect on the kids as does things like hitting them and shouting at them and coercing them, because the kids get desensitized to it. So you have a class managed where the teacher will say, hey kids, we can have 10 minutes of free time just so long as we're good up until the last 10 minutes and everyone's learning. Then for the last 10 minutes you can do what you want, have some free time. And the kids will say, okay, great teacher, we'll do that. And after 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of doing that, the kids don't want 10 minutes anymore. Then they want 15 minutes. And after that 15 minutes becomes too much, and then they want 20 minutes. And if they don't get it, then they throw a fit in this type of thing. Because the kids aren't actually learning anything under this type of management. They're not actually taking anything in. They're not learning to appreciate anything, neither intellectually or emotionally. They're not learning anything intellectually because their reasoning skills are not being embraced. They're just being stimulated by something external to them. And with emotion, most kids, they buy into things through an emotional experience. Their experience with adults, and even something like their acceptance of Islam and their willingness to practice it when they are young. It's something that they feel much more than they reason themselves into. So the entire experience that they have with adults who are around them, who are telling them things, is crucial, and it's what will form the basis of how they turn out, and certainly how their Islam turns out. And you need a school, we need to establish institutions that are based on this type of understanding of kids. So what we're going to do, guys, and sisters, sorry, we're going to watch some videos, okay? So part of what I do in the training with teachers, I have all this video. Some of it's of me teaching, some of it's of other teachers teaching, of interactions between young people and adults, students and teachers. It's all raw video, like real stuff. It's nothing scripted or anything like that. And I'll kind of break these things down for you in terms of nonverbal communication. And I'll show you some things that go wrong, which are things that are typical for adults to do when it goes wrong. Because when things go wrong with kids, what adults do is they operate on their stress reactions. Because kids are annoying, and they test boundaries. When you get annoyed by a kid, it triggers a stress reaction in you. When a stress reaction it gets triggered in you, your heart rate increases, your breath starts to tighten up and speed up, your muscles tighten up, which causes your limbs to raise up, and adrenaline releases in your brain. And adrenaline takes 25 minutes to 30 minutes or so to run through the body of a fully grown adult. So a lot of teachers, a lot of parents, they're actually running on adrenaline all day when they're dealing with kids. And that burns them out over time. Because once the kids go to bed or once the kids leave the school or this type of thing, they have no energy left for the rest of their life. So there needs to be a plan in place for the teacher with this type of nonverbal communication, this type of thing. So I'll show you how it doesn't work when you're just reacting to kids' misbehavior. And then I'll give you 2 strategies on what to do instead. One strategy is a strategy you use to get kids to actually listen to you. If you have a group of kids in front of you, or you're just talking to one kid, and you're trying to say something to them, and they're not listening, they're side-talking, or they're interrupting, they're trying to off-track you, what you do to get them to actually listen. And the second thing is what you do when you direct a kid to do something. You give a kid an order, you tell them to do something, and they talk back to you. This is the biggest thing that when it takes place, it creates escalation between children and adults. The adult tells the kid to do something, and the kid says something back, which naturally an adult feels is disrespectful, and it is disrespectful. So if the adult doesn't know what to do in that situation, they will just react on that disrespect. They'll get loud with the kid or whatever, and things will escalate from there. So that's what we're going to get into. So watch some video. We'll let it play, and I'll break it down a little bit. Okay, now I think we can turn the lights off, okay? Inshallah, and we'll go back and we'll run the slides. Bismillah. Okay, so
You have no clue what's going
just watch this guy for a little
on.
bit.
An attitude about this. And this is nonsense. I've been talking to everybody in here, okay? Yes, I have been. They tell me I don't know how to teach. I've been doing training all over North.
Okay, a few things here, just this little clip. All right, so this guy's acting in a really typical way when an adult gets annoyed at a kid. This is a really tense interaction. Okay, you don't de-stress yourself when a kid does something to annoy you. It ends up being a tense-filled interaction. Interactions filled with tension have some predictable physiological effects on kids that you see playing out here. One thing, even though this boy here is the subject of the teacher's berating, you see this girl in the middle and what she's doing to her face and how she's smushing her face into her hands. Kids will do that a lot in these types of situations. Why? Because what is taking place there is actually a reaction where her tear ducts are becoming activated. And kids, especially if they are more innocent and they are less used to this and they're not hardened to this type of thing and their defense walls are not built up yet, they really won't like these types of situations and they will want them to end and they will feel the urge to cry during them. Now, an adolescent in the middle of context around his or her peers is never going to let themselves cry. So she's like smushing her face into her hands to suffocate that reaction. You can kind of see the tension in the boy's face as well, and this kid in the back also. He's kind of making a joke about it. So kids have these different coping mechanisms, and as this video goes on, they're going to start making a joke of this guy. Because kids, they don't empathize with adults well, because they've never been adults. So the pressure that adults feel, all the responsibilities, the stress of teaching and our jobs, all that type of stuff, kids don't really understand that. So when adults get agitated with them, they don't really understand why. And they don't want to blame themselves for it. So to cope with it, they will put the blame on the adult themselves, and that begins with them making a joke out of it. The second thing they do, which all these kids will do when they leave this classroom, even after just this little interaction with the teacher, they're all going to, you know what they're all going to say about this teacher? They're going to say he's crazy, or he's got issues, or he's got problems with himself, or this type of thing. Okay?
America, and I know exactly what's going on.
Oops.
Okay, when you sit back here and rip papers up, and you don't take notes, you don't read your book, and you do what you do, I know exactly what's going on. I know how to teach, okay? Fine.
Okay, he said, does he look like he knows how to teach? He said he knows how to teach. Does he look like he knows how to teach? No, it's not very believable. Does he look like he has any control over the situation at all? No, he doesn't. Now, he's doing something really typical when adults get stressed out at a kid. Like I said, your heart rate increases. That causes your breath to increase and all your muscles to tighten up. And your limbs get active. And adults have this tendency when they're stressed out at kids, for some reason, they take their fists and they put them on their hips and do exactly what this guy is doing here. There's actually a term for this in the field of psychology and body language. It's called pheasant posturing or chicken posturing, because you kind of look like a chicken when you do it, and you start pecking away at the kids. Now, just in general, Kids react to and respect adults who can stay in control of themselves. Because kids struggle to stay in control of themselves, and we get mad at them when they get out of control. So why are they going to listen to someone who can't keep control of his or herself? The loud voice and the tense body posture, and especially the limbs being up. All of that signals aggression to kids. It signals that the adult's not in control of him or herself, and it triggers kids' defense mechanisms. And that's how walls start to get put up between adults and kids. And when kids get with their parents, they get this kind of berating with their parents. When they're young, like before age 9 or so, they will be redirected by it. Because before that age, kids, their minds aren't developed enough to where they think about talking back to a parent. Okay, they really just want adults to be happy with them when they're under age 9. So a lot of times it works at that age. By the time you get into age 9, 11, certainly you start to get to like 12, 13, 14, the kids start pushing back on this type of thing to the point where you might have like some real arguments when they're 13, 14. If it keeps going up until they're 17, 18, the kid a lot of times will start to emotionally disconnect themselves from the parents at that time. And they might even bring to the parents some big confrontation where they've been thinking for a long time about their issues with their parents. And by that age, 18, 19, their minds are developed enough where they can put enough things together that they can build up a pretty strong argument towards the parents of why they have problems and it's not them. And sometimes they will bring something to the parents at that time that the parents really just don't know how to deal with. But it was seeded a very, very long time ago, more with the way that we interacted with them, more so than whatever we were trying to tell them. Okay, this one's a gym teacher, big, tough, strong dude. And he's talking to the kids, like before they're going to go into the gym. It's funny, the kids are sitting on these balls. Okay, they think they're very clever in some of these schools because they think that if you have the kids on the balls, that will allow them to fidget a little and that will relax. It really doesn't do that. It's more about how the adult conducts themselves, whether or not kids are relaxed in a classroom. And you'll see here how the kids don't really relax because of the way the teacher's being. This video is also a very good example of just how, in these teaching type situations, the kids completely feed off of the energy of the adults. Okay, now there's some really interesting things going on in this video to illustrate. Now, first of all, I've cut the swearing out. If you don't know, swearing is extraordinarily common in American schools and amongst teenage culture. And it is extremely common. You know, teenagers, they have very flexible minds. They're actually really good at shifting the way they act from one place to another. Like, you know, they can go from one classroom to another in high school in 5 minutes, 4 minutes sometimes. And they'll be acting all goofy and with their friends and stuff out in the hallway. And then in a matter of minutes, they can come sit down in the classroom and be acting fairly serious. Adults actually don't transition that well. If you have a learning contact with adults, like if we were to take a break right now, you guys could never come back in just 5 minutes. You'd need 10 minutes or this type of thing because our brains don't transition as quickly. So kids, they're really, really good at behaving one way in one context and entirely different in a different context. And there's lots of kids where just to survive the teenage culture in middle school and high school, especially in American schools, they have to do a whole bunch of swearing because it's just the common vernacular amongst American kids. Because sometimes I play these videos and people are like, is that really what it's like in American schools? These types of interactions are extremely common. extremely common in American schools. And many of the teachers nowadays either stop caring that the kids do that. For some of them, especially if they're younger, like millennial generation or younger, they've internalized that there's just nothing wrong with swearing. What's really wrong about it? And they're just letting the kids do this throughout the day. So I just said to emphasize the need for our own schools and our own institutions where there's a modicum of values set. Now, what was happening here? Okay, this teacher is really worked up. He keeps going at the kid and at the kid and at the kid. Now, there comes a point with people where the electrical activity in their brain will literally get overloaded and they cannot help themselves but outburst. And that is more likely to happen to younger people than it is to older people because their brains are less developed. And this young person got to that point, and you saw him yell up and get up and scream at him. This isn't this young man's first rodeo. It's maybe the first time that he's shooting back like that, but he's gotten this a few times before and he's had enough. Now, the interesting thing about having an outburst, sometimes kids have outbursts at adults, sometimes adults have outbursts at kids. When an outburst happens, it's because of this brain overload that goes on, and the only function it really serves is as a stress relief to whoever has the outburst. So when adults really just lay it out on kids, the biggest function that is serving is for their own stress relief. Like I said, it might get the kids to be quiet one time, but it depends on their level of sensitivity to it. Same thing when kids are hit, typically, if it's being hit out of an emotional reaction and not part of a consequence system. That usually acts more as a stress relief for the adult than anything else. You can see the stress relief that the young man is actually gone for. While he was yelling, his arm was up and he was hunched forward and being all loud and this type of stuff. But after getting all that out, okay, his arms are down, his shoulders are down, all that signals relaxation. So he's actually a little relaxed now. The teacher could have an opportunity to de-escalate things, but he kind of keeps going with it, and you're going to see the young man have to do something to charge himself back up and match the energy that the adult is giving him.
I'm intimidated. Oh, no, you're trying to bait me into an altercation because you want to have a lawsuit. That's your toughness.
Okay, you see what the young man did there? He keeps going into this whole thing about you're trying to bait me into an altercation for a lawsuit. And the young man actually has to walk in a little circle to get his energy back charged up so he can go back and match his yelling at him.
I'm not doing anything except asking you not to talk and asking you loud now. I do not care. I don't care. Then leave. I do not know.
Now, I say that, I know it's kind of painful to watch. But I show that to show, the adult really does have control of the energy in these situations with kids. And they have the choice to set the tone for it, and the kids will feed off of it. Now, some interesting things here. Number one, you hear the guy just really forcefully saying, leave, 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 go. Kid's not listening at all. So getting nowhere with that. But look at this boy in the yellow ball. You see him? You see him? You see what he's doing with his hands and with his face? And he's doing the exact same the exact same thing that other girl was doing in the other clip. So I just show that to show there's real physiological things that take place because he's having that same tear duct activation. And that is a physiological response and showing of the initial stages of becoming desensitized to this type of thing and getting hardened to this type of thing. And again, it inevitably puts up defense walls between parents and children. And that eventually if those are not broken down or they're built up in the first place and never gone away, that is what results in children distancing themselves from their parents and what their parents want for them. The other thing it results in, especially in adolescence, is a lot of times periods where kids are lying to their parents a lot because they're afraid of their parents finding out this, that, or this about him. Sometimes even if it's just about small things. That is extremely common amongst American adolescent culture, that kids are being dishonest with their parents. It's not because the kids are bad or their souls are rotten, but it's because these defense walls are built up and they don't want anyone to have a bad impression about them. Okay.
I don't care. That's your next word. You're calling me. You're just calling me. You're calling me.
Okay, let's skip you on
Get
that.
out of the class. Get out of the
Whew.
I did. All right.
Just one more of these.
That's all right. That's all right. Who said anything was You talk more than anybody. You talk more than anybody in here.
Now, first of all, yes, the teacher is swearing here. I've cut it out, but the teacher is swearing. And that is not something that is uncommon for me to have seen working in public schools. A lot of teachers think it's like a way to be cool and like relate to the kids or this type of thing, to swear with them, and they think it's just fine. That goes on commonly in American schools.
Anybody.
Can I talk?
Anybody.
I let you talk.
You talk more than anybody.
I let you talk. And every time I'm trying to
You talk more than anybody too. We let you talk too much because all you do is talk.
Oh, I do talk.
That's all you do is talk.
Now, we're going to come back to this one when I talk about what to do when kids talk back and how to avoid getting into arguments with them and what to do instead. Because all these teachers are doing a terrible job of that. But this guy, he has terrible body language. Why? Because if you see the way he's sitting, and he's not square to the child. Just one piece of body language advice. If you have to commit to fixing a situation or addressing something with a child, you want to stand square to them, preferably relaxed with your arms down below your waist and your shoulders down so you look relaxed and in control. But when you're not square to kids, it signals that you're not actually committed to the situation. So like for this kid right now, he's trying to have an argument with him, but he's turned like this. So for that kid, with just his torso and his neck turned, it looks to him like the teacher's just one move from turning away from it. So the kid's incentivized to keep going and keep going and keep going because it makes it feel like he's about to win. And he is. Example of that with parenting, okay, if you ever tell your kids to go clean their room and, you tell them to go clean their room and after 5 minutes it starts to sound like the room cleaning isn't taking place anymore, especially if siblings share a room or this type of thing. If you go over to the room and you just peek your head in the room and you're like, hey, what's going on in here? The kids, they will fake like they're back at cleaning for 30 seconds, be like, nothing, it's fine, and they'll just wait for you to whip away and go back to whatever they're doing. But if you actually walk in the room, you stand square to them, you redirect them, you watch them get back to work for a little bit, you'll have much better results with that. So all these teachers, they're acting on their impulses, they're just being reactive. They don't have a game plan with their nonverbal communication with the kids. And as I explained, that results in raising of the voice, yelling, snapping at them. I mean snapping at them verbally. Sometimes, depending on the culture, you can snap at kids to get their attention and just fine. But I mean jumping on them verbally. Very tense facial expressions. Now, something important to understand that kids are extremely sensitive to facial expression. There are studies that are done where they take a group of adults and a group of kids, and they show both groups pictures of someone portraying a facial expression. And they will ask the individuals in the group or the group as a whole to name the emotion being portrayed in that facial expression and to rate the intensity of it. It is consistently found in those things that young people, they rate negative emotions especially with higher intensity than as adults perceive them and as the person showing it intends to put off. And young kids, they will actually interpret faces that adults see as being neutral, or just being as a resting face, as being a face that is mad or stressed out or this type of thing. Whereas adults see it as just like nothing. So kids have this emotional intensity to them, both in the way that they behave, but also in the way that they interpret people. So if you're not in control of these types of things, something that doesn't seem as big a deal to you is going to seem like a bigger deal to them. Okay, also too, with all these things, whatever is being said by the adult is not very well thought out because the adult is just reacting and they're just operating from their own emotional centers. And you hear all these cliche things, I'm sick and tired of you, blah, blah, this type of thing, And then actions with the limbs, which sometimes, if you're not in control, can result in hitting kids. Okay, the other thing, I explained this already, but this type of management of kids wrecks motivation and so does rewarding them. Okay, so what do you do instead? The overall rule is you need to be calm with kids. Okay, there is an expression in classroom management that teaches this type of thing. Calmness is strength, anger is weakness. or calmness is strength, agitation is weakness. Again, as I've explained a few times already. Because kids test boundaries, or they lose control of themselves, and they will respect adults who they see as being in control of themselves, which begins with the adult being in control of their own emotions, which the kids are very sensitive to how they interpret it, but the adult who is in control of their own emotions, they will interpret as being in control of the situation. If they interpret the adult as being in control of the situation, they'll be more likely to comply with them. Now, the first strategy to learn, the one that conditions kids to actually listen. Okay, you can use this if you're in front of a group of kids and you need to explain something to them. And everything you try to do with kids begins with explaining things to them. It's hard to get anywhere with kids if you can't get them to sit and listen while you talk. When you're going to teach kids, you're going to talk to them, or you're going to let them do something, you want to always communicate expectations to them beforehand. You want to anticipate the things that they might do wrong and explain to them not to do those things beforehand. That helps prepare them and set them up. But you can't even get them to do that if you can't get them to be quiet and listening. So what you do to get kids to be quiet and listen is a strategy called pausing and quieter restart. What this strategy consists of, when you are interrupted by a kid, and being interrupted by a kid doesn't just mean that they interject with words when you say something. It doesn't just mean that they ask a question while you're talking. It means that with their own body language and their own nonverbal communication, they come out of compliance with whatever the listening expectations are. So in a classroom, you have to set that. You have to tell them which way to face. You have to tell them what to do with their eyes. You have to have that in the school or a masjid school or something. The more uniform those things are, the better, because the consistency helps the kids. If it's one-on-one or in your home, different cultures have different things with that, okay? Western culture, generally, you look the adult in the eye. Some cultures, it's the opposite. You look down. Whatever a kid is supposed to do to show they're listening, that has to be set with them. And once they get out of those expectations and you're talking, you have to pause. Pausing means cutting yourself off in the middle of the sentence or the middle of the word that you're in. Why do you do that? Because when someone's talking to someone else, it sounds very unnatural for someone to cut themselves off in the middle of it. So a person takes notice of that, especially if you're in a classroom situation. Okay, you're in a classroom, you're teaching a class of 15, 20 kids, and you have Zaki and Ahmed sitting in the back of the room. Zaki, you're teaching. Zaki remembers that funny TikTok he was looking at last night. He wants to say something to Ahmed about it. And what does Zaki do then? The first thing he does before he even says something to Ahmed is he turns. So if the expectation has been set that he's supposed to be looking forward and looking up and looking at the teacher will see the moment that he turns. And the big mistake that teachers make, or anyone talking to kids make, is the moment that they see them get out of the expectations that they've set for listening, they let it go. And they tell themselves, well, it's just something small. Well, it's just one kid talking. Maybe he'll stop. Maybe he'll come back to it. He won't stop. He won't stop because once he turns and talks, he's not paying attention to you anymore. So he's lost track of whatever you're saying. And whatever back and forth he's going to have with his friend, he'll start it off being quiet so it rides under your voice, but it'll get louder. And once it gets louder, it's more of an interruption. And when he's doing that, once it gets a little louder, other kids will notice. When other kids notice, then they will start doing the same thing. And inexperienced teachers or teachers who don't know what they're doing, this happens to them all the time. They'll be talking to a class. They let one kid get away with starting to talk to the person next to him. And before they know it, 40 to 50% of the class is talking. And then they got to make a whole big thing about stopping. Like, hey, guys, you need to be quiet and listen. We need to blah, blah, blah. And whatever they were saying while the other kids were talking, no one was listening to that. And then whatever learning was trying to be done is cut off now. And kids are out of the continuum of learning, and they're not getting the message that's being said. So pausing needs to happen. Because with kids, managing kids is always an actions speak louder than words type of deal. Assalamu alaikum, brothers. We're talking about what to do when kids interrupt you, okay? That's the general synopsis of where we are at, okay? And what this lesson is about, it's about nonverbal communication. Okay, so I'm a teacher and a teacher trainer. And this is like the most powerful stuff that you can know for how to manage a classroom full of kids. And it's very, very beneficial stuff for parents too, because parents can use it just as well as teachers can. So we're talking about how to actually get kids to listen when you're talking to them, especially if you're teaching a class, but it works one-on-one as well. So when a kid interrupts, you pause, which means you cut yourself off mid-sentence. Why? Because managing kids, building relationships with kids, it is always an actions speak louder than words type of thing. And if you're talking to a group of kids and some of them start talking to one another and you keep going on with your teaching, what that is saying is, when I'm teaching, you don't have to pay attention. When I'm talking, you can talk and nothing's going to happen about it. I'm not going to do anything about it because what your actions are doing is continuing while they're talking. So you want kids to experience you as someone who, when you come in the room, people listen. When you speak, people listen. And the way you make that happen is by not having it any other way. Because when you get interrupted or someone comes out of the expectations you've set for listening, you pause, which means cutting yourself off mid-sentence, which is notice. Now, Zachy, when he turns to talk to Ahmed in the class, okay, he's doing two things. Number one, he is calibrating his voice to be low enough to ride under the teacher's monologue, but loud enough to land in the ears of Hamza. The other thing he's doing is he's keeping an eye and ear out for whether or not the teacher is noticing, because he knows he's doing something he's not supposed to be, and he's trying to get away with it. Now, showing that you notice, one way is being like, hey, Zachy, stop, turn around. But if you do that, now you've called him out, and you will stress him out, and you'll trigger his defense mechanisms. And especially if it's in front of other kids, he will feel like he's got to push back to save face in front of them. And he'll feel like it's disrespectful. And you really risk the chance that you're going to enter into a power struggle with him. And also, too, you're not really giving him a chance to be in control of his actions, because it will kind of like when you trigger those defense mechanisms, kids don't get into a reasonable frame of thinking. They get into an emotional frame of thinking. But if he turns like this to talk to Hamza and he hears the teacher stop, he might say 1, 2, or 3 words to Hamza, but he'll notice the teacher stopped. He will think it's because of him, because he knows he's doing something he's not supposed to. And while he's turned and talked to Hamza, he'll just recoil right back like this and facing front and looking at the teacher again. Now, when he does that, what does the teacher do? Okay, number one, you breathe to relax yourself. And I might talk a little bit about how you breathe to relax your face, because it's a very, very important thing. But the teacher breathes, relaxes his or herself, and the teacher is going to have to continue talking. Zachy is back at paying attention now, but you know, in the back of his mind, he's just kind of faking it because he knows that he's been noticed. You didn't have to say anything, but you let him know that you noticed. But of course, he's planning, well, when the teacher continues talking, I'm just going to go right back to it. So what does the teacher do to mitigate this, but not call Zachy out and make a whole big thing about it? Excuse me. The key to this is restarting the sentence that you got cut off in, but doing it in a quieter voice. And a lot of teachers, they make this mistake. They think if kids start talking or whatever, they got to get louder. You don't want to get louder. You want to restart the sentence. One, why? Because that gives Zachy and any other kid who got cut off from listening the chance to recalibrate their attention, because their attention got cut off. If you continue in the middle of the sentence, it's like not logical what you're saying. So you go back to the start of the sentence. When you start quieter, that makes the kids have to work harder to pay attention to you. So they have to like lean in a little closer. And for Zachy, because he did this whole calibration with his voice of putting it at a certain level where it would land on his friend's ear but not be heard by the teacher, now that whole calibration is messed up because you're doing it quieter. So turning back is going to feel harder for him. Now, he might still turn back. He might do it. Good chance he's going to do it. What do you do when he does it? You just do this again. And then you go through the whole thing again. And then if he tries a third time, you do it a third time. He might try it a fourth time. If he tries it a fourth time, you do it again. Maybe by the fourth or fifth time, it might be time to say something to him if he's so set on it or so out of control of his impulses or so defiant that he keeps going back at it like that, you might need to say something to him. What do you say to him? You just explain what you're doing calmly. You just say, Zachy, I can't continue while you're talking to him, so you need to face forward and listen, just in a calm voice, in a quiet voice. And that gives him the chance to say, oh, okay. And if it's calm, it doesn't feel like he's going to get in trouble, doesn't feel like he's getting called out. For anyone who is in a teaching context, if you are teaching elementary school kids especially, there's this little thing you do for the sisters. I'm like putting my hand by the side of my face, kind of where you act like you're talking to him quietly and you're like, Zachy, I need you to turn around and be quiet, this type of thing. It makes the kid feel like it's something private between you and him. And again, he doesn't feel called out. And that's all. You just explain to him what you're doing and explain to him the expectation. And when you do this with absoluteness, with a classroom of kids or a group of kids, or when your own kids, when you talk at the dinner table, or you talk to them when they need a lesson taught, it's what gets kids over time to experience you, again, as someone who is listened to when they speak. So we can watch some video. I'll show you some video of this in action. Bismillah. So here I am. In this video, I'm in a masjid. Okay, and a lot of my teacher training for public school teachers, I'll teach them about what learning is like in the weekend schools, because that's a whole thing our kids go through. The Muslim kids go to public schools, because when they come to the weekend schools and they learn the Quran, they learn whatever, it's a certain style of learning. And it conditions certain learner habits in them. And then if they go to school Monday through Friday and the teachers try to teach in a wholly different way, that's a whole thing that the kids have to kind of navigate. The fact that the learner expectations and the learning style of expectations are completely different from Sunday to Monday. That's a whole thing that our kids go through and struggle with. So I teach public school teachers about a little bit about Islamic learning so they understand the style of it. Bismillah. And the teaching methods that are popular in the public schools are not in concordance with more direct teaching, which is actually proven by research to be better for kids. But anyway, okay, in this context, this is in Rochester, Minnesota. And these are younger kids. Okay, they got a little 30-minute lecture to begin the day, and now they're like off in side rooms, and these kids are kind of learning beginning Arabic. And I'm setting up my camera to film them in the corner. I'm not normally there. And they're getting all curious as to why I'm setting up this camera. So it becomes apparent that our brother Walid here, he's not going to be able to start until I get these kids settled and explain to them what's going on. And while I explain to them why I'm recording them and all this type of stuff, they get a little jumpy and excited, and they start interrupting me and this type of thing. And then I have to use this strategy, and you can actually see it play out. Walid, I will tell you too, is a wonderful brother. He's a world-class translator at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, which is a world-class hospital facility. He translates Arabic, English, and French, but he doesn't really know how to manage kids. And this is kind of a struggle we have. We have kids in the weekend schools, and the brother might know Quran, they might know Islamic studies, but they don't necessarily know how to manage kids. And this is why this type of learning needs to be done, and we need to help one another. Okay, let me get this. Now, first of all, just so you know, he's trying to get the kids set up by going to like each one of them one by one. That never works to set up a classroom of kids. You just end up playing whack-a-mole with them, because once you get one kid set up, the kid behind you isn't set up anymore. And you can just turn around forever doing that. He should be at the front of the room showing each one of them, okay, take out this book, put it on the table, open to this page, take out your, just showing them one by one as a whole group what to do. That's what he should be doing, but he doesn't know that.
Hey guys, anything I use this for, you won't be seen.
Okay, so right now, they're not used to me. I'm novel. Kids like novel things. So they're paying attention to me when I'm first starting to talk. When you first got to talk to a group of kids, and you don't have that advantage of being novel to them, you got to do something to get them all quiet, get their attention. So you got to do something kind of loud, like, okay, guys, we're going to start class, or, you know, you count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I need you all quiet, something like this, whatever. When you do that, especially if they're used to you teaching them, you will do the countdown or whatever. Most of the kids will start to be quiet, but you'll always have a few kids who are still continuing with their buzzing or their little conversations or whatever. This strategy that I'm teaching here, this is what you use to get the rest of those kids quiet. You can start your teaching intentionally, knowing that you're going to get cut off like 2 or 3 words into it. And it'll make it like you're struggling to get your words out. So if I'm going to say, okay, kids, yesterday we were learning, I'll be like, okay, kids, yeah. Okay, kids, yeah. Okay, like this. And then the 50 to 60% of kids who are listening, when you start to do that, they'll turn to the other kids and be like, shh, quiet, he's trying to start this type of thing. And that's where the peer pressure starts to come in. And you'll see some of that play out here, okay? So they're listening to me right now, but I'm going to get interrupted from a kid on the right. And you'll see how fast it takes place and the level of sensitivity you want to have with it when this type of thing happens.
Just so you know, I'll edit it up.
Let me go back
I'll
here.
edit it to blow your face up. Hey guys, anything I use this for, you won't be seen in it. Just so you know, I'll edit it up.
Okay, right there I did the pause. So I was saying to them, anything, because they might have some anxiety here that I'm filming them, I'm going to post online somewhere, and they'll be exposed like that. So I was telling them, I'm going to blur your faces if we use anything. And a kid to the right of me says, TikToks? Like, you can use on TikToks? And you heard me pause right there. And after I did that, he didn't say anything more. Now, when I continue, I'm going to continue on with what I'm saying. I'm going to go back to the start of the sentence that I was in the quieter voice. I'm not going to react to his little interjection. This is a big mistake that people make when teaching kids. Okay, kids, they get curious. They interject questions, all this type of stuff. If I were to turn to him and say to him, no, it's not going to be on TikTok or something like that, I'm going to have another kid asking me if it's on YouTube, and then another kid asking me if it's on Instagram, and then another kid asking me some weird thing about it or whatever. And now, whatever I came to say, I haven't valued that enough to hold on to it and stick to saying it, and I've allowed the kids to sidetrack me. And that teaches the kids that this whole thing, it's all just some interjection conversation between us. It's not about what I have to say. So when you're teaching kids something and you're talking to them, you have to value what you are going to say, and you have to hold on to it. And when they interject, you can't really respond to that unless they're asking a question in an appropriate way at an appropriate time as you taught them to ask it, which isn't happening here. He's being rude and interrupting. So I don't need to go to him and say, hey, that's rude, interrupt, but I just continue with what I'm saying without addressing it.
I'll edit it to blow your face up. The reason I'm recording you guys is because I'm a teacher. Okay, I teach at schools like they have here in Rochester. I also teach teachers.
Okay, so these kids, this Arab-looking guy who's in our Duxi, that's what Saajid call the weekend school, who's in our weekend school, he teaches the teachers. What? Okay, and a lot of times, especially kids under the age of 10, a lot of times their interruption and stuff is just a lack of impulse control. They're worked up about something or they're excited about something. So this kid to the right of me, he kind of has some tics because he first, I said that about two teachers and he goes, Aywa! Like I don't think he's saying Aywa in Arabic. I'm not sure what he's saying exactly, but he just has some type of tic. And then the rest of the kids are going, whoa, or whatever. So now I'm being interrupted, and I'm going to have to get them calmed down. And I'm going to use, this pausing restart strategy. Like I'm struggling to get my words out to get them to calm down, okay? Now, Waleed, if you're in a room with another adult who's trying to do this, what Waleed's doing, he's picking up on my pausing. So he's like getting anxious about it and trying to give him all direct. He actually shouldn't do that. He should just let it play out because it will play out. So you hear me doing the pause there.
One of the things I teach.
Okay, now here, I'm not positioned well with the kids because I wasn't there to teach them. So I'm in the back of the classroom. It's me locked. So you see, there's the kid in the gray jacket in the far of the room. He's not looking at me. There's the kid between me and him in the blue hoodie whose back is also turned to me, and he'd have to do a really hard turn to look at me. There is also a kid who is underneath the table in front of them. I'm going to do this pausing in a moment, and in an instance, all three of those kids are going to have their eyes on me.
Teachers about is
You see that? You see that? Did you hear me pause? You see them? Did you hear it and see it, or no? Do I need to replay it? You see it, okay?
One of the things I teach teachers about is Muslims.
Okay,
Teach teachers about.
even right there, like the level of, because setting expectations with kids, again, it's all about actions. So like I paused there because just one kid, this kid on the right, he just went like, or just something like that. Even something like that, you want to pause for. A lot of times kids have like nervous tics. They'll start like tapping their hand or tapping their pencil while they're sitting listening. This is the entire way I manage that. You just pause when they're doing that and treat it like an interruption in this manner. And even kids who struggle with that type of thing, and some of them might even be diagnosed with ADHD or this type of thing. This is how you actually condition the discipline into them to get out of those habits. Okay, now you hear the boy to my left, who's a little older than the other kids. He's like 11. The other kid's maybe like 6, 7, 8, 9. He's saying, hey guys, he's explaining something. Because, most kids, when you're in a learning environment, they actually do want the learning to take place. They actually do want to learn. They're interested in stuff. So when you're doing this and you're showing non-verbally that's a struggle for you to get your words out, the pressure starts to come upon the kids who are misbehaving from those other kids. Now, if you're in a teaching context, you don't actually want those kids to say anything to the other kids. So if I were in my classroom and when this happens in my classroom, the kids who do that, I say to them, I appreciate you doing that, but you don't have to. If a kid interrupts or one of your classmates interrupts, I just need you to continue listening and be a good example for them. The reason you don't want them to do that is because if it's a kid who's really like anxious about the learning not happening and he's looking for ways to not make it happen, he'll use reacting to those other kids as a way to distract. So if the other kid says something like, hey, be quiet or something, then he'll go to him like, hey, you shut up or something, and now it's become a thing between the two of them. You don't want that to happen. Also, too, if you're teaching a group of kids and you do this pause, sometimes you've paused for one kid and you might get a side interruption while you're paused. In that case, you can't do another pause because you're already paused. So those kids you do need to address verbally to redirect them. Because even if you need to talk to just one kid in a classroom, when you're in front of the whole class, you still need every kid following the listening expectations. Otherwise, things get out of hand. Okay, you hear me doing it? You hear me doing it? Okay, now he doesn't need to be saying that because they've actually quieted down now just from the pausing.
Okay. I teach teachers about Muslims, and I also teach them about how Muslims learn outside of the Monday through Friday school. So I'm taking some video of this here to show other teachers that they'll see.
Okay, now there, I went through it maybe somewhere from 40 seconds to a minute of getting interrupted and pausing and restarting, getting interrupted and pausing and restarting, getting interrupted and pausing and restarting. Really just to get one or two sentences out and just to get one idea out. But at this point, it has gotten them quieted down so they are all listening and the sentence is coming out fluidly. That 40 seconds to 1 minute of patience that was exhibited by practicing that nonverbal strategy, it is entirely worth the investment to make the learning go smooth from thereafter. And it will be much longer than 40 seconds in a minute if you start getting into it with kids when they interject or interrupt. If you start trying to direct each kid one by one and all this type of thing. You'll end up getting into power struggles with kids. You'll get frustrated. They'll get frustrated. The whole thing will go downhill. Okay? So this was with little kids.
There's a way.
How much time do we have? Okay, we're going to keep, I got all day. My flight's not till Monday, so I got all day, inshallah. And I have a lot of fun with this type of stuff. So I was with little kids. In Minneapolis Public Schools, I teach mostly 11th grade now. So in this video, this is the year after COVID, okay? And my kids went through a lot during COVID and the George Floyd stuff because I'm literally just 4 blocks from where he was killed. and the neighborhoods that my kids live in were destroyed and all that type of stuff, and they're from refugee families to begin with, so they're just traumatized upon traumatized. They deal with gang activity, all this type of stuff. I work in a very, very challenging environment. And this year after COVID, Minneapolis Public Schools was in distance learning while all that was going on, and then we came back in 21-22, and schools are really struggling from that. And I'm actually finding what a lot of teachers are finding, actually just now, just this week, I started doing a new unit with my students. But it's a unit that I've done before, and that I was doing, the last time I did it was actually before COVID. And it's like these kids, they can't do the assignment that kids their same age could do 5 years ago. It's like they're like academically at least, and a lot of times behaviorally, they're underdeveloped. Anyway, that's kind of a side point. But this is a fourth period language arts class. And fourth period is after lunch in my school. And the principal was allowing them to play basketball during lunch. So in the beginning of the school year, I was having a lot of issues with kids coming in late because they wanted to hang on and get in those last few shots and all that type of stuff. The gym is down the hall from my classroom. So I'm talking to the kids about the housekeeping of whatever their current assignment is at the beginning of class here, and I have to deal with 3 kids coming in late. The first one who comes in, he slams the door really loudly, and it's something that has to be addressed because if you just let it go, then you set the expectation that it's okay to do that. So I end up having to talk to him one-on-one, but in front of the whole class, so I have to have everyone listening to it, and even while I'm talking to him, there's 2 more interruptions by 2 other kids coming in late, and these girls who are trying to side talk to the side and all this type of stuff, and I have to use this strategy to the nth degree. And you'll see it take a little bit of time to get everything going, but also how it plays out to result in smooth learning. And where you saw the reaction of the kids in that, and the last one, you'll see the reaction of me in this one, okay? And what it actually looks like. Excuse me. Because it's that year after COVID is why I'm wearing a mask, but I take it off. I kept taking it off to show my face and this type of stuff, because it's somewhat essential with the nonverbals. However, as I said, kids are very in tune to facial expression, and they will pick up things like around your eyes and that type of stuff. So even if you wear a mask or you're wearing niqab or this type of thing, this stuff still works with kids.
You can see every day what you have. The expectation is
Okay, now there's just 2 girls like kind of giggling softly to the side, but I paused.
the expectation is that you're doing work on that every day.
Giggled again, pause, and I'm using a PA system because you have those in the school, but I'm turning that off to make my voice quieter.
Regardless of whether you're in 6th period.
Okay, regardless of whether you're, I couldn't get through the sentence just because they did this little, like just this little giggle, okay? But I need to set the expectation that not even that is okay. Because if it becomes okay for them, it becomes okay for everybody.
The expectation is that you're doing work on the autobiography every day.
I mean, you see what I did right there? Like, I started, like, within the second word, they went back to the giggling. I stopped, they cut it right away, and now I'm going forward with the sentence.
Regardless of whether you're in 6th period or not. And I try to check.
Now, Minneapolis Public Schools does not have good control of the cell phones at all. Most public schools don't have good control over the cell phones at all. And the device addiction is a really big problem for schools. Pretty much every school has the kids working exclusively on Chromebooks and iPads these days. Research is very conclusive in the field of education that kids read better, they comprehend better when they are doing it on paper texts. And with writing, their brains are more active in their learning centers and this type of thing when they're doing it by hand versus typing. And all of this device stuff in school, it is all a money-making operation for the tech companies. It is not something that is healthy educational practice for all different types of reasons. And the kids are taking advantage of it to the nth degree. And most schools will say they have a policy where the kids can't have the phones out in class. But imagine being a teacher. You got 24 kids in the classroom. Each one of them has a Chromebook, and they all have a cell phone in your pocket. It's you versus 48 devices. So it's a very, very big issue. I've trained teachers from 12 Islamic schools now over the past year since August. In one form or another, pretty much all the Islamic schools, they don't have the kids with phones at all. So private schools, they have a much better control over this aspect. And the district I work in, because of the thinking of the people in the city and the people who control the district, they are playing with the idea of getting rid of the policy that says kids can't have their phones out during the classroom. They want to take that away from the teachers, actually, because there are people who are that confused in public education, honestly. But for me, the whole way that I handle the phones is through this pausing thing. And I put a laser on the phone if I need to get their attention to notice that I've done it. But even with that, that's how I handle it. Okay, now Hassan's coming in. In person, it sounds a lot louder than it does through the phone audio, but he slammed the door very hard, and you actually hear a girl saying, La ilaha illallah, because she's shocked. It's a public school, but my students, they're all Muslim in this class. So he's come in late. That's an interruption. I have to pause for that. We have to wait for him to get his book and get his notebook and get all set up and everything, because you can't teach while kids are milling around the classroom doing stuff. And I'm going to have to address this whole slamming of the door thing with him. So I will have to talk to him one-on-one in front of the rest of the class. But in doing that, I have to make sure everyone else is listening too. Because if I talk to him one-on-one and everyone else is not listening and abiding by the listening expectations, the whole thing will get out of hand. Okay, now what happened there, Ahmed, sitting not too far in front of me. See, Hassan, when he's coming in late, he's being chased by his 10th grade friend who he's playing basketball with, who is a student who's in my class next hour. Now, the kids know that my next class is like a low-level English language learner class. So when Ahmed says about the 10th grader, you know, it's funny, he's in this class next hour. He's actually making fun of his level of English, and unfortunately, it's something a lot of the kids do amongst each other, and it's sadly not an uncommon thing amongst kids who are the children of immigrants. But I can't let Ahmed do that and just let them giggle, because I'm going to need to talk to Hassan, and we all need to pause for his interruption of coming into the classroom while he gets set. And if I just let him do that, then everyone's going to be doing that and all this type of thing. So I turned to him and said, "Can you not talk, please?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And it was very important that I did that in not a way that was snapping, like getting on him quickly, in a way that was relaxed and calm, because he receives it better that way. So Hassan's getting his stuff here, getting set into the classroom, backing out the chair to sit down. Now I start saying to him to show up on time. I'm going to say, "Show up on time to him, please." But I can't get that out because I get interrupted by a second kid coming in late. And you can see here, I've trained myself to a very sensitive level that whenever I sense an interruption from a kid, I pause what I'm doing in teaching. It's different when adults, because you have to respect their individuality more. Okay, so now we got to wait for this girl who's coming late. And when she comes in late, I am actually going to say something, because she says "Assalamu alaikum" to me, and you have to return the salam. But then when she goes to sit down next to this other girl, they start kind of chit-chatting. And that acts as interruptions that I have to kill to get everyone set to listen to Hassan. Or listen to me talk to Hassan. See, I'm trying. You have to try really intentionally to keep a relaxed face in these types of situations, because naturally your face wants to tense up. So these two girls are talking to the side.
Okay, that's fine. That's okay, no, it's fine.
Now, when Ahlam comes in and she starts talking to Muwahib, and I say her name to get her to stop, I don't even have to redirect her directly, She knows why I'm talking to her. And when kids know what you're going to say to them, what do? They start giving you all their excuses, because kids always have excuses for why they do this and why they did that. And they want to get you dragged down in their excuses and listen to their excuses. So that's why here, because the priority right now is getting the class set and everyone into the listening expectations so I can talk to Hassan, that's why I'm cutting her off here. This is a bit of an advanced move. And it's very important that I'm doing this, that's fine, in a very relaxed and dull way, so as to not trigger her defense mechanisms. But it's also saying to her that the excuses don't really matter. And this is a whole other way that adults get dragged down in their interactions with kids. Kids will always make excuses for whatever they are doing. Sometimes those things exist in their mind as real reasons for why they did what they did. Sometimes there's a context where you sit down and have a conversation with them where things are calm, oftentimes removed from the situation where they did what they did, and you reason with them out, you explain the reasoning and why they need to be different and all that type of stuff. But typically in the heat of the moment, where you need to get the kids to do something, it is a huge mistake to start getting bogged down in whether or not the reasons are this, and if you thought that, then you should be thinking this, or that type of thing. Same thing if kids are having disputes with one another. You don't want to start getting into all this who did that type of stuff. It just results in a mess, okay?
Thank you. Well, can you turn so you're facing forward, please? Well, can you turn so you're facing forward, please? Can you not talk, please? Thank you.
So her friend Muwahib, when she came in late, she got all turned, and you got to face forward to be sitting and following the listening expectations. So I can't turn to talk to Hassan until I have all the other students set to be listening.
Show up on time, please.
Okay, and I said, show up on time, please. And he said, And even that's an interruption. So I did the pausing. And why is it an interruption? Because it's the first inkling that he's going to start giving me his little excuses. And it's not about his excuses here. It's about me delivering the lesson that he needs to hear.
Number one, show up on time.
Okay, right there again, he's tried to start saying something, and just cut him off. And again, but didn't cut him off sharply, harshly, this type of thing, but just nice and calm.
Don't be later than 11:40. Number two, should you show up late? And
Now, right there, a kid starts flapping his folder against the desk. He's not saying anything verbally, but that's still an interruption. And again, sometimes kids have these nervous tics. It's something innocent, but you can't have them do that if you're teaching a group of kids, so you do this pausing to stop.
sometimes there's a reason why you might show up late. And if you show up late, and I remind you to show up on time, I'm not saying there isn't a reason that you showed up late. But I'm saying you still need to show up on time. Should you show up?
When kids start giving their excuses and you just need them to do something else, again, you don't want to get bogged down in arguing about their excuses. And sometimes you can even anticipate, if you spend enough time with kids, it becomes predictable when they're going to start getting defensive and give all their excuses. So this is something you can say to the kids. You're going to say to them, like I said to him, if you show up late, I'm not saying you don't have a reason why you showed up late, but you still need to show up on time. And that's the general formula. You just say to them, I'm not saying you don't have a reason why you didn't meet your responsibility, but you still need to meet your responsibility. And what does that do? Number one, it kills the excuse making. It shows that it just gets to the point that it's not really about the excuse making. But it does make the kid feel at least validated to an extent that they think they have a reason in their head for whatever they did, why they did. And you're at least acknowledging that might exist. And usually that's enough for them. That's usually not enough for them. When kids get all defensive in that type of stuff, usually, especially with their parents, that defensiveness is rooted in not wanting your impression of them to be ruined. They don't want you to think they're irresponsible, or they don't want you to think that they're bad intended. So like the more you try to dig over whether or not the excuse is valid or this type of thing and get all into that with this type of thing, and the kids will start saying things that they're making up and are incoherent and this type of stuff too. And you're not setting them up for success in that way when you get into that type of arguing with them. If you just acknowledge, I'm not saying you don't have a reason, but you still need to do X, Y, Z, it leaves things open that, you're not like trying to shame them or this type of thing, but it's just about them meeting their responsibility.
Late for some reason. Turn the knob on the door slowly, so it's quiet. Open the door slowly, so that is quiet. Come in.
Someone else like squeaking their shoes or
Come in
something.
and use soft hands when you're getting your book and your notebook, so that is also quiet. So the class is not disrupted by your being late. Because when you do that, your being late is not just your own issue anymore. Now you've made it an issue for everyone else. I'm just talking to you. You're not the only one that's surprised, too. Okay.
So now a third student's come in late, but because I've been practicing these nonverbals so thoroughly with the kids, and Faisal, he's a bit of a clumsy kid. He's going to like drop his book as he's getting set up and stuff. But there's 20 kids in the classroom right now. We're all able to wait for 30 long seconds in silence while he gets ready and sits down, and there's not any more interruptions or anything because I practice these nonverbals. Now again, sometimes you always lose some learning times when you're conditioning kids into these expectations. But it is entirely worth it up front to stick to the expectations.
So and I'm enjoying reading the autobiographies very much. You're doing well.
And when you're trying to get kids to do stuff and you get compliance from them, you want the compliance to feel good. You don't want to, I could hang things on here and give them a whole kind of shaming talk about, guys, you need to show up on time and this type of stuff. I will have that conversation with them later. Maybe at the end of class. Maybe at the beginning of the next class or this type of thing. But once kids have gotten into compliance, you want that compliance to feel good. Now, inshallah, we're going to, so we'll do inshallah, come tomorrow, because most adults need to know what to do when kids talk back to you and how to get them to do what you need them to do and not get into an argument, and that's what I'm going to get into next. But you need to know this thing first. So that's really valuable stuff. So inshallah, brothers, come tomorrow. While we're eating and stuff, you want to ask me questions, I'm more than happy to answer questions, type of thing. Anything good that I said comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything wrong that I said comes from the deficiencies within myself. Bear witness that there is none worthy of worship but Him alone. All praise is due to Allah. I ask Allah for forgiveness and we seek repentance from Him.